So, very good morning, students. Welcome back to GPS class. Now, let me begin the Unit 3 contents. So, let me open the syllabus for you first. Please make a note of the contents of the Unit 3. Are you able to view the Unit 3 syllabus? Say yes or no. In the chat box, you can respond. Okay, you are able to view the syllabus. So, here I will try to increase the size of the file. So this is Unit 3, GPS receivers and data errors. Of course, we have just named the types of errors in the GPS. Now we are going to study in detail how the almanac errors will occur, how the ephemeris errors will occur, how the multipath errors will occur, and most important is the clock errors, how the clock errors are occur and how to uh, overcome them, how to correct them at the receiving end. So first part is the GPS receivers. So what is the receiver architecture? And when we are designing a receiver by ourselves, what are the various options to be taken? Because the GPS receiver is having a different properties than that of an ordinary receiver. And more precisely, what are the different types of antennas that are required in the GPS receivers and how to design the antennas. These are the things. These are the things to be studied. Then after this, GPS error sources. What are the various error sources? That is selective availability errors, SA errors, we already know. Propagation errors, okay, the multi-path propagation delay, ionospheric error, tropospheric error, because the signal is above all these layers. The GPS satellites are above all these layers, and the signal that is transmitted by the GPS satellite will have to travel through these layers. Hence, they will cause some errors, multipath error, ionospheric error, and how to estimate them. A mathematical estimation using the dual frequency GPS receiver. Because if the receiver is unable to estimate the errors, then it is failing because the navigation message may be erroneous. And methods of multipath mitigation and ephemeris data errors, and finally the clock errors. Clock errors refers to the timing errors. So these are the contents of the Unit 3. So we'll complete today the receiver architecture and the receiver design options and antenna design up to this. Up to this, we have to complete today. Okay. Able to view the screen? Will you be able to view the screen? Say yes or no. Yes, guys, please respond. Are you able to view the screen, what I shared? Are you there in the class? Okay, right. Thank you. So let us, before proceeding for the today's class, let us have a quick revision of the first part of the GPS receiver. So this is the architecture of the GPS receiver. So it is divided into three stages. RF stage, first IF stage and second IF stage. So various tasks that are performed by the RF stage are, it is the signal is received through the receiving antenna, then it is passed through the band pass filter, and it is pre-amplified. Because when the signal is traveled through a wide range of distance, the signal power level will get degraded, so that it is needs to be amplified. Needs to be amplified. And the signal travel will be at a higher frequency. So what is happening in the IF stages, two stages of IF? The frequency down conversion is being done. The frequency down conversion is being done. Of course, the frequency down conversion is done with the multiplying with the local oscillator frequency. The local oscillator frequency is generated from a reference oscillator, and the same is used for the first IF stage and for the second IF stage. After the down conversion process, it is to be digitized. It is to be digitized. That means the analog signal has to be converted into the digital signal. That is called A to D converter will convert that. And after that, the processing. The GPS receiver will accept that signal, and what are the various components of the GPS message, GPS signal message required for the navigation process. All of them will be received by the receiver, and it will process them, and finally it will give the output. And finally it will give the output, that is navigation outputs. That is position, velocity, time, and fault, and detection and isolation of the object. So let us see in detail. So first stage is the radio frequency stage, that is pre-amplification stage. Second is the frequency down conversion, and the intermediate frequency amplification. So frequency down conversion is done in the two stages. And signal to noise ratio, here we have to maintain a sufficient SNR, because there is different sources of noise within and outside the receivers. So SNR to be maintained very high level. For that purpose, we will use the technique called as the despreading. Of course, that's the then digitization, then baseband signal processing. Baseband signal is nothing but the modulating signal or information bearing signal. Then carrier tracking, code tracking, and signal spectral despreading. Of course, this is to enhance the signal level above the noise level, so that it becomes a narrow band, and by using a narrow band filtering, we can retrieve the original baseband signal. So this we already knew it. So that is, so we will see in detail. The purpose of the receiver front end is to filter and amplify the incoming GPS signal. Is to filter and amplify the incoming GPS signal, because the incoming signal, GPS signal, when it is received at the receiving antenna, will get attenuated, because it has to travel a longer distance, and it has to pass through some noisy channels, so that it gets the signal amplitude gets degraded, so that it is to be amplified to the required level. And the power available at the receiver antenna output terminals is very small, so it can be masked by interference from the more powerful signals adjacent to the GPS passband, because the receiver will receive the signal. That signal sometimes may be from the outside, because we have learned spoofing techniques. Spoofing means unintentionally or intentionally other enemies will send some jamming signals. So this receiver must be able to reject them and accept only the signal. That's why power level is to be increased. And to make it useful for the digital processing at the receiver latter stage or last stage, and RF amplification in the receiver front end provides how much decibel gain? 35 to 55 decibels of gain. Of course, the front end will contain the passband filters to reduce the out of band interference without the degradation of the GPS signal waveform. The GPS signal is centered around one frequency. So we will use a band pass filter or a pass band filter, because when the modulated signal is traveling, it may interfere some of the noise signals also. So usage of the pass band filter will reject the unwanted signals. And only the desired signal will be passed to the filter. Afterwards, it is amplified. Afterwards, it is amplified. Next. And the bandwidth of the L1 and L2 GPS signals is 20 megahertz, of course, plus or minus 10 megahertz on either sides of the lobe. And there is a sharp cutoff band pass filters are required for out of band signal and rejection. Within the band is to be selected or filtered, and out of band signal is to be rejected. So here we need with a filters with a sharp cutoff frequencies. Next, frequency down conversion. Frequency down conversion. The frequency of the radio frequency signal is at a higher frequency. It is to be down converted. For this purpose, we will use the intermediate frequency. So here the GPS signal is converted to a lower frequency called an intermediate frequency for further amplification and filtering. So what are the objectives of this down conversion? Why we need to do down conversion? The first one is the total amount of signal amplification needed by the receiver exceeds the amount that can be performed in the receiver front end at the GPS carrier frequency. So the total amount of the signal amplification that is needed by the receiver may be more than the GPS receiver. Then excessive amplification results in parasitic feedback oscillation sometimes. If you amplify it more, then it is difficult to control. If it is overdamped, oscillations may come across. So for this, the sharp cutoff filters with the GPS signal bandwidth are not feasible at the L band. So excessive front end gain makes the end stage amplifiers vulnerable to the overloading. How? By strong nearby out of band signals. If the out of band signals are stronger, then this is vulnerable to the overloading error. So in order to overcome that, we are amplifying that. So by providing the additional amplification at an intermediate frequency, different from the received signal frequency, a large amount of gain can be realized without the tendency towards the oscillation. So signal, we are avoiding it from the oscillation process. Next. By converting the signal to a lower frequency, the signal bandwidth is unaffected, and the increased ratio of the bandwidth to center frequency permits the design of the sharp cutoff bandpass filters. So what is happening? So we are converting the signal to a lower frequency band. Signal bandwidth will remain same. Bandwidth means lower cutoff to higher cutoff. Frequency range is changing. Frequency is changing from higher cutoff to the lower cutoff. From higher frequencies to the lower frequencies. But the bandpass filter bandwidth is maintaining same, because we cannot change the filters all the time. Once a bandpass filter is chosen, means its higher cutoff frequency and lower cutoff frequencies will remain same. Whether the signal is at high level or at a lower level, it will maintain a sufficient bandwidth. And these filters can be placed ahead of the intermediate frequency amplifiers to prevent the saturation by the strong out of band signals. So the filtering is by means of the surface acoustic wave devices. So filtering is done by the SAW devices. SAW stands for surface acoustic wave. The third one is conversion of the signal to a lower frequency makes the sampling of the signal required for digital passing much more feasible. Of course, this is analog in nature, right? So analog signal to be converted into digital, first we have to sample it, next we have to quantize it. Sampling and quantization are the two techniques involved. So sampling makes easier if the frequency is down converted. And more important is the SNR. How much SNR we should maintain? That is signal to noise ratio. And so here the IF bandwidths range from about 2 megahertz for the low cost receivers. For the low cost receivers, the intermediate frequency bandwidth is 2 megahertz. For a high cost or high end receivers, that is 20 megahertz. And the dominant type of noise is thermal noise. So in both the cases, the probable noise is of thermal noise in the first RF amplifier stage of the receiver front end. So how to estimate the noise? There is a formula for this. Noise power is given by K into TE into capital B, where K is a constant given by this number, and B is the total bandwidth, how much bandwidth it is, and T is the effective noise temperature. If this is 10 degrees centigrade rise, that is equal to how much noise power. If it is 20 degrees centigrade rise, that is equal to the how much noise power. There is an estimate of that. So that is given by the noise power formula. And the effective noise temperature is a function of what are the causes for the noise here. So it is sky noise, antenna noise temperature, line losses, receiver noise temperature, and ambient temperature. These are the very important. Please make a note of this. So the probable noise in the GPS receivers is a function of sky noise, antenna noise temperature, line losses, receiver noise temperature, and also the ambient temperature. So how much it is? It is 513 degrees Kelvin. The effective noise temperature for a GPS receiver is 513 degrees Kelvin. It results in how much noise power? It is around minus 138.5 decibel watts in a 2 megahertz bandwidth and minus 128.5 decibel watts in a 20 megahertz bandwidth. So here you can compare. If bandwidth is more, the noise is less. If bandwidth is less, the noise is more. Of course, you know SNR is defined as signal power to the noise power ratio. If you are taking in the numerical value, if you are measuring it in the decibels, then it is the difference of them. Higher bandwidth power to the lower bandwidth. That is signal power to the noise power. If you are measuring in decibels, we will take the difference. If you are measuring as a ratio, if you are measuring in numerical values, it is ratio of the signal power to the noise power. So about 90% of the CBA code power lies in a 2 megahertz bandwidth. So there is only about 0.5 dB loss in the signal power. Because if you are using a C/A code in a 20 megahertz bandwidth, then only 0.5 decibels is lost, because 90% of that is present in the C/A code. Whereas for a 2 megahertz bandwidth, it is minus 16.6. In either case, it is evident that the signal is completely masked by the noise. So it is to be avoided. And the next most important is the how to make the receiver design choices. Please make a note of this. So what are the functions of a GPS receiver? They must observe the signal from at least 4 satellites, because the trilateration technique that we have learned in our unit 1 needs minimum information from the 3 satellites. Of 3 satellites, if the user or the object's altitude is known. If it is not known, information from the 4 satellites is required to obtain a 3D position and velocity estimates. What we need exactly in the GPS navigation, of course, its position and rate of acceleration, that is attitude. And of course, with what velocity it is moving, that will be learned by the rate of attitude. So what should be the choices? So there will be several choices to how the signal observations from a multiplicity of satellites can be implemented. In the early designs, reduction of the hardware cost is taken and complexity is required. For that purpose, the scientists have used the single channel receivers. Of course, there are different types of receivers, single channel, 2 to 5 channels, and multi-channel receivers. We'll see all of them. So first step, receivers with the channel time sharing. So time sharing is accomplished with the help of, once again, the multiplexing concept. We have studied already this. Time division, multiplexing. Different slots are given for different. First step is select the pseudo noise code, PN code. Select the pseudo noise code that corresponds to the satellite that is observed. Because when a signal is received, the satellites, at latitude and longitudes of the satellite will be given by the navigation message, that is in the almanac message. Then as per that received satellite, the as per the received signal from a particular satellite. The same information is also present in the receiver. So receiver will wisely select the PN code that corresponds to a particular satellite, because there are 24 satellites. 24 satellites information is present in the receiver. So if from any of the satellite the signal is received to that particular satellite, it will have a PN code that will be selected by the receiver in the first step. Able to understand? Next. Then it computes the current state of the code at the start of the dwell, that is time duration, for how much time it is, based on the state at the end of the last dwell, the signal Doppler and eclipse time since the last dwell. For how much time it is being there, dwell means for duration of the time. It depends on at the end of the last dwell, the signal Doppler, if there is any Doppler effect is there, and the eclipse time since the last dwell, previously when it was received. Next, third one. It loads the code state into the code generator hardware. For code generation purpose, there will be hardware present. It loads this code state into that. Then it computes the initial Doppler frequency of the FLL, frequency locked loop, or the phase locked loop reference, because in the GPS receiver we use the PLL technique. Next step is it loads the Doppler frequency into the PLL hardware, followed by it initiates the reacquisition of process by turning on the code tracking and carrier tracking loops, because code is to be tracked and also carrier is to be tracked. Carrier is to be rejected and code is to be accepted. And next step is determine the reacquisition, to determine when the reacquisition has occurred, because time is also very, very important. Based upon the time only we could able to estimate the position, that is code or frequency or phase lock. And lastly, to measure the pseudo range or pseudo carrier phase or pseudo carrier phase rate during the remainder of the dwell. For the remaining time, these are to be calculated: pseudo range, pseudo carrier phase, and pseudo carrier phase rate. At what rate the carrier phase is being changed. Is that clear? So these are the receiver with the channel time sharing. At what time, which step is done. Then we have single channel receivers. Of course, single channel receivers, 225 channel receivers. How many channels are it? This is depending on how many channels are used at the receiver. Because initially the cost is to be reduced and hardware and complexity is to be reduced. The people have used these single channel receivers, but later it is implemented to the multi-channel. All processing such as acquisition, data demodulation, code and carrier tracking, all are performed by a single channel in which the signals from all of those satellites are time shared. Time is being shared because of availability of a single channel. So it may take more time. Of course, this will reduce the hardware complexity, but the software required to manage the time sharing process can be quite complex, because it has to manage all these things one after the other, right? And there are also some of the performance penalties. Next, the process of acquiring the satellites can be very slow, because time is dependent and requires a juggling act to track the already acquired satellites when trying to acquire the others. So it may be a mismatch, because already we have tracked one signal, then we have kept it aside and sharing the time for tracking of the other signal. So there may be a juggling act. So during this time, the signals from other satellites are eclipsed, and the resumption of reliable tracking can be very difficult process. This is the advantage. Of course, advantage is cost is less, complexity is less, hardware is less. But more software functionality is to be taken, and juggling act when multiple signals are received also will occur. So we go for a slow sequencing designs. When slow sequencing is done, After all the satellites have been acquired and their FMRS data stored, the two basic techniques can be used to track the satellite signals in a single channel receivers. The first one is, in the slow sequencing designs, the signal from each satellite is observed for a duration on the order of 1 second. A duration on the order of 1 second. Because a minimum of 4 satellites must typically be observed, the signal from each satellite is eclipsed for an appreciable length of time. For this reason, extra time must be allowed for signal acquisition, re-acquisition at the beginning of the each null interval. Continuously, having to reacquire the signal, generally it results in a less reliable operation, since the probability of losing a signal is considerably greater as compared to the case of the continuous time. Because we are tracking by sharing the time, there is no continuous track, so it may be somewhat less efficient. In the presence of dynamics, especially in the presence of the dynamics in which unpredictable user platform motion can take place during the signal eclipse, because sometimes the signals we may not be able to predict. Next, different types of receivers, I said. Two-channel receivers. So we are, instead of to overcome the drawbacks of the single-channel receivers, the engineers have implemented the usage of the multi-channels, starting with two-channel receivers, then receivers with the 3 to 5 channels. These are actually present. Of course, you can implement receivers with your own number of channels, but these are till now implemented channels. First 2 channels, then followed by 3 to 5 channels. Then other one is a multi-channel all-in-view receivers. Multi-channel means many receivers. So the capability of L2 is to be highlighted here. L2 carrier capability. The GPS receivers that can utilize the L2 frequency, that is 27.60 MHz, gain several advantages over the L1 only receivers. Of course, we already studied this in our previous class. It will have a truncated, encrypted version to provide the anti-spoofing effect. All these things we have studied. And one more advantage, dual frequency ionospheric correction. Second is the improved carrier phase amplitude resolution in high accuracy differential positioning. So what is dual frequency ionospheric correction and what is improved carrier phase amplitude resolution in high accuracy differential positioning? So ionospheric delay means multi-propagation delay, because ionosphere is filled with a lot of smoke and dust particles. So signal will take, even though it is traveling with the same velocity, but time it may elapse for more time. So that we will use the dual frequencies, L1 and L2. That correction is done there. And carrier phase amplitude resolution in high accuracy differential positioning correction. So in high accuracy differential positioning correction purposes, we will use the carrier phase ambiguity correction method. Next. So till now, what we have learned is we are using 2 codes. One is the C/A code and another is the P code. But here in the receiver, GPS receiver point of view, there is code is not required for some specific applications, especially the commercial applications. That is also there. There are 3 receivers with respect to the GPS receiving, with respect to the codes that are used. That is C/A code, P code, and codeless. That means no code is used. So the C/A code with its 1.03 MHz chipping rate and 1 millisecond period has a bandwidth that permits a reasonably small pseudo-range error due to the thermal noise. This code is easily generated by a few relatively small shift registers. Of course, how this code is generated? Because there is a code generator, right? So this may be designed or generated with the shift registers. And here the C/A code has only 1023 chips per period. So it is very easy to acquire. But in military receivers, direct acquisition of the P code would be extremely difficult and time consuming. That's why we are going for the P code, of course. And then the P code. P code has a 10.23 MHz chipping rate, whereas it has a 1.23 MHz, 10 times. And is known to both civilian and military users. So it has a very long period of 1 week, we know already. Whereas C/A code has a 1 millisecond. So here we generate a Y code that is produced by encrypting the P code with the W code. W code is almost looks like a P code. It has a slower chipping rate than does of P code. It's already learned. Now, what are the advantages of the P code? L2 capability. What are the L2 capability? The first one is improved navigation accuracy. Navigation accuracy is very much improved, and improved jamming ability. When more number of signals are received, it is able to reject the unwanted signals, and better multipath rejection. These three are the advantages of the L2. And the third one is the codeless